Something to keep in mind when you're laying out your molds. In the book, Ted tells you to rip your sheets of plywood into two 2-foot strips. That's because he's building the Redbird model and all of its molds fit in 22 inches or less. I'm building the Nomad and all of these molds are around 25 to 26 inches. So I can't rip my 2 sheets in half. I'm going to end up using more like 2.5 sheets of plywood. So make sure you check your plans and see your mold dimensions before you start ripping your sheets. Now that I've cut out pieces to accommodate each mold and doubled them up and clamped them, I've kept good track of where my factory edge is and lined those up because that's a good starting point. Now I'm going to lay out the center line of each mold. I'm going to check the center line for square by flipping the square over, putting it up against it. Now I've painstakingly positioned my mold pattern using my little windows on the center line and the base line. Now I have to slip in 2 sheets of carbon paper, one face down towards the wood and one face up towards the paper. This doesn't seem like it'll be awkward at all. We're ready to trace our first lines, and I'm going to lay some blocks of wood just to keep any bubbles out of the plans and try to remain as accurate as possible. There's a few ways that you can trace these lines. The first one is going to be carefully free-handed. I made it through my first curve. It was nerve-wracking, but I think I did okay. Now for these straight lines, I'm going to go ahead and use a straight edge. Spinning my pencil lead all the while. Okay, the moment of truth. Looks like we have a pretty nice transfer. Now we're going to flip it over and use the transfer on the back of the paper to make the other half of the mold. Now that I've flipped my plan, I only need 1 sheet of carbon paper to transfer onto the wood. Some speed up. Moment of truth. All right, one down. And don't forget to write the station number on there so you don't get them mixed up. I've traced a couple of my molds freehand, but Ted suggests, if you have the faculty, to use pins or brads and a wood batten, which gives you a fence to draw against and allows you to trace a much fairer curve. You've seen me trace a line freehand, and now I've used tacks and a wood batten. A third way to trace your lines onto the mold is using one of these fancy ship spline curves. It's an adjustable curve that sort of holds its shape, so I'm going to use it and my tacks. I believe you can order one of these from the fine people at Lee Valley. So I got all my molds cut out carefully to just outside the line. Now I'm going to go in with some sanding tools and shaping tools and come cleanly down to the line so I have nice fair curves to work with. This is a sure form. It's basically like a cheese grater for wood. Almost any hardware store sells them, and it's great for shaping the edges of plywood and particle board and MDF, where tools that are made for more fine-grained woods are sometimes a little awkward. But this is just like shaping a wedge of cheddar cheese, but less delicious.